Ukraine wants to transfer drone boat tech, USVs, to Japan, and I love it. Japan doesn't need a bigger fleet to defend its coastline. Japan needs a coastline that feels hostile to cross. And Ukraine just wrote the playbook for that, exactly, using drone boats to shove Russia's Black Sea fleet back from the shore. Now, President Zelensky says Ukraine is ready to share marine drone and UAV interceptor tech with Japan. If Tokyo plays this right, it doesn't get kamikaze boats, it gets a coastal defense force that feels like a storm front. Kamikaze, or Divine Wind, already destroyed 1 or 2 Mongol invasion fleets, and that word kamikaze sort of got co-opted in World War II to represent the suicide pilots. So maybe we don't call this one kamikaze, let's call it the Ryugyuan Flotilla, named for the sea dragon god, because the ocean is where the message gets delivered. Hey friends, Wes here. I'm a veteran, I'm a journalist, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time watching weapon systems get stress tested in real wars. I learned Kendo when I was a kid because that's super relevant when you're an adult. And now, Ukraine has been doing something rare. It's been exporting lessons at the speed of combat, not the speed of bureaucracy. Today we're talking about a potential tech transfer from Ukraine to Japan. Autonomous drone boats for coastal Japanese defense, plus interceptor drones and cyber lessons that Ukraine learned the hard way, with Russian missiles as the instructor. So let's start with Zelensky. He told Kyoto News that Ukraine is ready to open up technologies, including marine drones for coastal defense, and he pointed at the headline result. Ukraine has had no real fleet, yet it still managed to damage and destroy Russian ships in the Black Sea with naval drones. If you're a longtime viewer, you've probably heard this joke, but why does the new Russian Navy have glass-bottomed boats? So they can see the old Russian Navy? Come on. We've watched Russia pull key assets away from Crimea's Sevastopol base, and Ukrainian strikes made the place feel like a bad neighborhood at night. Even Russian officials have acknowledged the shift. Ukraine's pitch to Japan is basically this. You already have industrial capacity, air defense, missile production licenses, and a serious tech base. Ukraine has current battlefield methods, proven at scale under electronic warfare, under jamming, under real shooting. Put those together, and you get something stronger than either country has on its own. So let's talk about what marine drones actually means in Ukraine's case, since it's evolved fast. One example is the Sea Baby unmanned surface vehicle linked to Ukraine's security service. By late 1925, Ukraine was showing variants with a stabilized machine gun turret and even a Grad-type rocket launcher, plus claims of longer range and heavier payloads than earlier models. We've seen hints of upgraded Sea Babies with reported ranges of over 1,500 kilometers and payloads of up to 2,000 kilograms, with weaponized configurations that go beyond simple one-way attacks. So the drone boat is not only a floating bomb, it can be a remote gun platform, a scouting platform, a decoy, a sensor carrier, a drone carrier, or a system that launches air-to-air missiles from the sea. That matters for Japan, because Japan's geography is the entire story. The Nansei or Ryukyu island chain stretches toward Taiwan. Tokyo has been reinforcing defenses across those remote islands, and recent reporting has highlighted plans to deploy missile units on Yonaguni, Japan's westernmost island, by 2031. If you live on an island chain, your first job is making the water around it feel lethal. If Japan builds a coastal drone boat force and someone labels it kamikaze flotilla, that label drags the whole thing into the wrong decade and the wrong moral frame. Japan doesn't need nostalgia. Japan needs deterrence. That's why I like the Ryugyuan Flotilla. Ryugyuan is maritime, it's defensive in vibe, it's culturally grounded, and it doesn't borrow the branding of imperial suicide operations. But here's the question we should be asking next. If Japan already has missiles, patrol aircraft, destroyers, submarines, and a serious coast guard, why would it want to care about Ukrainian drone boats at all? Well, because drone boats are not a replacement for ships. They are just a way to reshape the first 50 miles of ocean into a killing zone that costs almost nothing to hold and costs a fortune to cross. Think of coastal defenses as layered denial. Layer 1 is sensing. You need eyes on the water. Japan is already investing in unmanned systems, and open reporting shows Japan's defense establishment has been pushing unmanned concepts. For example, USNI reported Japan's SHIELD concept as a multi-layered, literal defense approach using networks of unmanned systems across domains. There's also reporting of Japan's development work on USVs and prototypes projected later on this decade, and that's where Ukraine could be a huge boost in technology. The next layer is targeting. Ukraine has been doing rapid kill chains in the Black Sea with operators, networks, and systems adapting under constant Russian countermeasures. That experience is hard to simulate in peacetime. And then layer 3 is engagement. This is where the Ryugyuan flotilla earns its pay. A swarm of autonomous or semi-autonomous surface drones can do several jobs at once. They can screen straits and approaches, they can force ships to maneuver, they can act as decoys to draw fire, they can strike high-value ships if they get a lane, they can carry guns or rockets for close defense against small craft, helicopters or drones, depending on configuration. And then the last stage is resilience. Ukraine's drone boat story is not only about the boats, it's about building systems that survive jamming, survive EW, survive comms loss, and still finish a mission, even if that mission becomes return home instead of hit target. There are some Sea Baby variants in Ukraine that include AI-assisted targeting and self-destruct mechanisms meant to prevent capture. Now that matters for Japan because any coastal fight in the Western Pacific has an EW problem baked in. If the spectrum gets dirty, autonomy and fallback modes decide who goes blind first. Ukraine earned credibility in the Black Sea in a way few countries can claim. It took a navy that outgunned it, then it made that navy feel unsafe near the Ukrainian coast. Oh, then it pushed key assets further away. Russia had ships, Ukraine had engineers with a grudge and a stopwatch. That's the kind of knowledge transfer Japan can actually use. Not in the romantic sense, in the practical sense. Now, Japan is not a desperate buyer here. Japan has high-tech industry, shipbuilding, electronics, and disciplined procurement. But Japan also has alliances and supply chains that can scale production once a concept is proven. Zelensky has also hinted at joint production or knowledge exchange, pointing at Japan's capacity in missile and air defense production and the broader set of war lessons Ukraine can share, including cyber and crisis management for critical infrastructure. That's huge because the best version of this story is not Ukraine sells boats. The best version is Japan builds its own boats with Ukrainian war feedback baked into the design. Japan has been shifting toward stronger deterrence and stronger posture across its southwestern islands, and trend keeps getting stronger. A Ryugyuan flotilla fits neatly into that. It's a defensive tool that raises the cost of landing, raises the risk to amphibious ships, and complicates any plan that involves moving through narrow waters. If an adversary wants to mass ships for an amphibious push, drone boats force those ships to assume contact sooner. And if an adversary wants to run gray zone harassment, drone boats can give Japan persistent, distributed presence with lower political risks than sailing a destroyer into every argument. Japan's defense policy still has constraints, and Japan has been careful about what it funds and how it frames support for Ukraine. Just look at Japan's expected participation in NATO's Prioritized Ukraine Requirements List, or PEARL. Japan plans to fund non-lethal items such as radars and vehicles while staying consistent with its approach to lethal aid. So, Japan is already operating in a lane that emphasizes defensive systems, surveillance, and enabling capabilities. Coastal defense drone boats can be sold in that same lane, especially if the framing stays focused on sea denial and homeland defense. A realistic cooperation model looks like this. First, doctrine and training exchange. Ukraine shares operational lessons, how to organize operations, how to build kill chains, how to handle EW, how to secure comms, how to conduct decoy operations, how to plan saturation attacks without burning through your inventory. Second, hardware and software modules. Ukraine has designs and combat-proven payload concepts. Japan has manufacturing quality control and scaling. You merge those, you get a platform that matches Japan's maritime environment. Third, integration with Japan's existing layered defense. Tie drone boats to coastal radars, maritime patrol aircraft, surface combatants, and land-based anti-ship missiles. Tie them into Japan's unmanned shield-style thinking so they become one more layer in a denial stack. Anyways, Ukraine already proved a navy can lose freedom of movement without losing a major fleet battle. It can lose it one drone at a time, with operators sitting in a van and a ship captain wondering which wave has teeth. For Japan, make the coastline feel like a storm system. Let the would-be invader explain to his leadership why the ocean has started hunting back. That is it for today, friendos, my friendos and kendo. Subscribing helps me stay relevant in a world drowning in misinformation, and it really does send a message to the YouTube data center to keep pushing this guy's videos out there. So consider it. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Crimea is Ukraine.